Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Hart Bennett, and today I'm going to read Chapter 7 from my second book, Seven Sisters, Overland. The train the Saints boarded the next morning had several modern coach cars in tow and would be taking the Saints into Canada towards Detroit, Michigan, and it was a much nicer train than the two they had traveled on in New York State. But of course, anything was better than cattle cars. The Saints nearly filled 4 of the 7 passenger cars on the train. They would be traveling on this train for 2 nights. The trainmen were quite friendly, not at all belligerent toward them. Caroline happened to be standing by the back door of the car waiting to enter when she overheard 2 porters. "See if you can get a couple of men to put up the candles and light them when it begins to grow dark." Suddenly an idea sprang into her mind. "Pardon me, sirs, I know you are looking for some men to put up your candles, but I have 4 especially reliable and capable traveling companions who would be happy to do that for you." They looked at Caroline and measured her determination. "Well, we've never had women do this task before. Give us a trial run. If we don't execute the job as well as any man you've had, you can replace us tomorrow." "I guess we could let you try it for a day," said one eyeing the other. "We don't care who does the job as long as it gets done." "There's only one thing more," hedged Caroline. "Would it be all right if we took the old used stumps of wax from the holders and kept them?" The porters didn't act like anything was wrong with this request. "We just throw them away anyway, so that would be fine with us." He then took Caroline to show her where the large candles and other supplies were stored. When she returned to her sisters, they were curious. "We were starting to worry about you," said Eleanor. "Where did you go with the porters?" "Sisters, I volunteered our services to help light the candles in each of the cars for the next 2 nights." "Why did you do that?" questioned Phoebe. "First of all, it will give us something to do to break up the monotony of this train ride, and secondly, when we are out on the plains, we will have the candle stumps to burn at night. The only catch is that we have to do our job in a timely manner, with the efficiency of a man." "I think we can do it better, sisters, don't you?" said Lavinia. "I'm already half a head taller than all the men on this train." The sisters burst out laughing as Lavinia lifted her arms over her head and increased her 6-foot frame to almost 8 feet. "Fanny and I can hand you the candles." "This is going to be fun," said Fanny, rubbing her hands together. After digesting all this, the sisters joined Caroline in her exuberance over their new task. "I'm going to assign each of you a specific job so our task can go quickly and smoothly," said Caroline. After some brief instructions as to who was going to do what, the sisters actually started looking forward to when they could start replacing the candles. This anticipation made the time go by slowly for a while, but they were soon waylaid by the conversations and singing around them. This occupied their minds for the next few hours. Late in the afternoon, Caroline determined the time was right to begin their new job. She rallied her sisters together and left Eleanor to watch over Alinda May. She guided them back to the porter's supply closet, and each one took a basket of candles in one hand and other necessary supplies in the other. "Sisters, I've been thinking about the best way to do this," said Caroline, "and I've come to the conclusion we ought to go to the last coach car first and replace the candles there. Then we can work our way back to the front of the train." "Why don't we just put the candles up as we go?" suggested Lavinia. "Then our baskets will get lighter and lighter." "Well," reasoned Caroline, "if we go to the end car and work our way back and happen to run out of candles, we will be closer to the supply closet and won't have to walk so far to get more. And another thing, we will end up in the Mormon-occupied cars at the front and won't be disturbing the non-Mormon passengers in the faraway cars as much." "That is good thinking, Caroline," said Susanna. "We don't want to have to cross between the cars any more than we have to." "Where are you going, Phoebe?" questioned "Where are you going, Phoebe?" questioned Matthew as the sisters traipsed past. "We're in charge of replacing and lighting the candles in each car." "That sounds kind of hard. Are you sure you don't need a man to help?" he said, puffing out his chest. "We might need a man," she said, and then added, "but we don't need a boy." Matthew's mouth dropped open. "What?" "Don't you worry, we'll be just fine, thank you." Phoebe was finding she had quite a competitive nature when it came to proving herself against boys. She would do what she had to do to make this task succeed. The couplings between the cars presented the first obstacle to the sisters. It was very dangerous crossing them, especially with their hands full of supplies. There was a portable floor plank stretched across the gap that fit into a track on each side of the connecting cars. There was plenty of play in it when the cars swayed and jerked. There was, however, there was lots of play in it when the cars swayed and jerked. There was, however, a little railing for part of the way across that was supposed to protect the person in case they lost their balance. The twins thought it was fun to run across quickly, but it worried Susanna, who took her job of protecting the twins seriously. Caroline studied the cars as the sisters passed through each one, trying to remember where the candle holders were located. The majority of the cars had 4 candle holders, but some had 5 or 6. They all had glass covers to protect the candle flame from being blown out by drafts that continually circulated through the cars. Caroline hoped she had instructed each sister well enough so they could go into each car, do their job quickly, and leave the passengers with as little disruption as possible. When they started through the cars that didn't have any Mormons in them, they were a bit apprehensive about how they would be received, but no one paid much attention to them, for which they were grateful. The last car was their first chance to test their ability to do the job quickly and unobtrusively. There were only about a half dozen families there to act as their trial audience. Caroline carried a small stool in case it was needed, but Lavinia could reach up easily and take the glass cover off the burned-down candle. "You don't even need a step stool," said one elderly gentleman, admiring Lavinia's ease in reaching the candle holders. "You've got quite a stretch." Then, without restraint, he plunged on. "Are you with that group of Mormons riding in the front of the train?" The sisters braced themselves for derision. "And you refer to yourself as brother or sister?" Lavinia replied boldly, "Yes," to both questions. "Well, Sister Stretch, you are doing an outstanding job." Lavinia blushed and smiled. "Thank you very kindly, sir. I appreciate that." The sisters stifled their laughter. Lavinia continued her work by handing the cover to Susanna to hold. Then she took the used candle down and handed it to Phoebe. Fanny immediately handed her the new candle. Lavinia placed it securely in the holder, and Caroline lit the candle with the long lamp-lighting pole, which had a lit wick on the end. Then Susanna placed the glass cover back into Lavinia's hands, and she reached up and placed it over the flaming candle. After replacing 3 more candles, the task was completed in that car. "Let's give Sister Stretch and her candle brigade some applause," the man continued teasing. Everyone joined in clapping and smiling and offering thanks as they left. The sisters beamed all over. The warmness of this reception helped make the work in each of the remaining cars easier and easier. The system Caroline worked out proved very efficient, and the sisters were in and out of each car in a matter of minutes. Soon the sisters arrived back at the cars that were carrying saints, and received equally good praise. Their baskets were lighter now, since replacing the large candles with the candle stumps. Just as Caroline predicted, they ended up being a couple of candles short, but happily they only had to walk half a car length to obtain the extra candles from the porter's closet. "This turned out to be a delightful distraction," said Lavinia, "and I got some much-needed exercise." "And we got a new nickname, too," said Fanny, "the Candle Brigade." The saints around them laughed heartily, agreeing it was a perfect name for the industrious sisters. The sisters felt a sense of security as they stashed the old candles stumps into every available space in their baggage. Some of the candles were smaller than others, but they had a good start toward their supply for the crossing of the plains. When Caroline reported to the porters that the task was satisfactorily completed, she was elated to receive the go-ahead to continue the next day's candle distribution and lighting. As the second day wore on, the train plowed farther into Canada, never stopping. The saints had run out of extra food they'd purchased at Niagara, and they were becoming exceedingly hungry. The children started whining relentlessly. Canada was a huge but sparsely populated country under Queen Victoria's English rule. The train had already chugged through thousands of acres of timber and wilderness, with more in sight. The leaders were getting worried about when they would obtain their next food. President Tippett finally spoke to the passing porter. "Sir, do you have any opinion as to when we as to when we will be stopping and if we will be stopping close to a place where we can buy food for our company. We have a water stop soon, but it isn't near any settlements. I understood your group was supplied with food for their train ride. We thought we were, but unfortunately those victuals were gone yesterday. We didn't realize Canada would be so remote. We're sorry you misunderstood, Mr. Tippett. Our Canadian passengers are used to our train schedule and know how to prepare for it. The train kept going, but finally came to a small clearing where there was a lone water tank and nothing but trees in every direction. When the train rolled to a stop, the Saints looked out the window in disappointment as President Tippett broke the news. Brothers and sisters, I'm awfully sorry to announce this, but the porter tells me there aren't any settlements for another 3 hours. Before he could even groan, he quickly turned to George. Let's sing some hymns, Brother Careless. George knew he had to get the children's mind off their empty stomachs. Do you children have any suggestions for a song? He asked cheerfully. Several hands went up, and George called on one of the young Jobson boys, who was eagerly waving his hand to get noticed. Can we sing Hark, Hark, Hark? That is a great selection, son. Several of the children smiled and clapped with delight. Yes, yes, we want to sing that one. The Saints sang with fervor, and when they got to the chorus, the children forgot their hunger and sang at the top of their lungs. Hark, 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 'tis children's music, children's voices, oh, how sweet. When in innocence and love, like the angels up above, we are they with happy hearts and cheerful faces meet. Kind of murdered that last line. They with happy hearts and cheerful faces meet. There we go. Each verse got stronger and smiles abounded. The Saints in the second car could hear the singing of the first car and joined in. Eventually, there were 4 cars singing and echoing each other. It was an amazing sound. The Canadian linesmen smiled as they went about their work of filling the depleted water tanks on the train, and the Canadian passengers enjoyed this unexpected entertainment as well. What a cheerful group of travelers, they thought. The song ended with joy and laughter. Then, to everyone's surprise, they saw some movement through the windows and noticed something, or someone, was coming through the trees. It turned out to be dozens of men and women walking toward them. As they got closer, the Saints could see they were carrying baskets. President Tippett's hopes rose as he stepped off the train and walked toward the group. Friends from America, said their spokesman, welcome to Canada. On behalf of the Canadian Charity Aid Society of London, Ontario, we want to treat you wonderful people with some sandwiches. President Tippett was flabbergasted when he looked at the hundreds of plump sandwiches in the baskets. He couldn't believe this good fortune. He waved to the Saints and invited them to come off the train. The Saints and a few of the other passengers poured off and lined up by each of the smiling Canadian ambassadors. There were enough sandwiches for everyone and plenty of handshakes, thank yous, and backslaps, laughter, and conversation from the Saints and passengers as they offered their gratitude. We are highly appreciative of your hospitality, said President Tippett. Brothers and sisters, let's give 3 cheers to our neighbors in Canada. After the cheers, the Saints and passengers mingled with the society members and learned that once a month they traveled by buckboard 20 miles or so to one of the train stops on the Eastern Canadian Railway line and provided train travelers with complimentary food. We try to follow the teachings of Paul when he said, "Charity never faileth." I can't believe you good folks showed up just when we needed food the most, said President Larkin. We are scores of miles from any village or settlement, and your group just happens to choose this stop, this day, this hour to bring food. The Lord is truly looking out for us, brothers and sisters, said President Tippett. Amen, amen, reiterated the other grateful passengers. President Tippett continued, as for Canada, you can give me the petticoat government any day. The gratified society members smiled as they shook hands all around and bid farewell. It wasn't long until they vanished back into the trees from whence they came. With their stomachs full, the Saints and other passengers felt blessed and comforted as they climbed back into the coach cars to spend the next 3 hours clicking and jiggling along the rails to the next settlement. Tell us a story, Sister Schneider, begged the twins, who had migrated back to where she was sitting. Sister Schneider seemed to have a never-ending well of stories about her husbands, her boarders, and her cooking exploits. Her audience was growing because others sitting in nearby proximity were starting to hang on her every word. Did I ever tell you about when I cooked for our neighbor's hay men? No, please tell us, urged the children. My boarding house was on the edge of town, adjacent to the neighbor's farm. During each harvest, I would cook for the men so I could earn a little extra money. I had to cook for my boarders anyway, so I just cooked twice as much. I have always been a good cook, if I do say so myself. In fact, I can't remember a time when they didn't brag on my cooking, she bragged. But this one day, I was a little short of supplies, and I didn't know what I was going to have for dessert. Working men need to finish up their dinner with something sweet, don't you know? I could have offered bottled raspberries, but that didn't seem quite enough to satisfy them, so I searched the pantry for anything I could find. After moving all the stores around, I found an old package of raisins hidden in the back. I didn't even know it was back there. So, with the anticipation of providing some succulent raisin pies for them, I opened the package to measure out the raisins. As I scooped them into a bowl, I noticed they appeared to be squirming. I took a closer look. They were full of worms. "Ew, icky," squealed the twins, and everyone else within earshot expressed their equal disgust. "What did you do? What did you do?" "Well, I was in a dill pickle." "What could I do? I just plucked them out as best I could. Then I poured some boiling water over the remaining raisins to soften them up. Hopefully any worms I missed got scalded to death." "Ew," they all said, scrunching their faces. "How did the pies turn out, Sister Schneider?" asked Matthew. "Those men just ate and bragged on how good that pie was. They said it was the best pie they had ever eaten, and they were disappointed when they couldn't have another piece." Sister Schneider laughed with glee. I thought to myself, well, I guess the worms were cooked, so the men will survive. Sister Schneider never failed to please her listeners. When the twins returned to their seats after Sister Schneider's story, it was about time for the second foray into the last coach car to begin the candle replacement. The passengers were equally as congenial this time and marveled at the efficiency of Sister Stretch and the Candle Brigade. The next morning, the train stopped in a depot on the east side of the Detroit River, where the Saints filed off to await the ferry boat to cross the river, which marked the borders of America and Canada. When they finally crossed back over the border onto American soil, all civility and comfort stayed in Canada. They had left their lovely Canadian train for an old, creaky, weathered one with seats that were lumpy and covered with threadbare material, but at least there were seats. The tracks they were riding on, however, were the worst they had traveled on yet. The irregular swaying and jerking of the cars was causing many to become nauseated. The noise was deafening, and the trainmen were rude and demeaning. They acted as though they were put upon to have passengers on their trains, and they looked so grumpy no one dared talk to them. After enduring the unbearable discomfort for close to an hour, Brother Clotworthy felt it necessary to venture a request to a passing trainman. "Sir, is there some water on the train?" He was hoping to secure a drink for Jane. "Do I look like a waiter to you? There is no beverage service here, mister. Maybe you Mormons can hold up your tin cups, pray for some water, and it will magically pour down from the sky. Or you can just wait like everybody else until our next stop, which will be in about 2 hours. That exchange definitely discouraged anyone else from asking any further questions of the hostile trainman. "Are you feeling sick, Alinda May?" Eleanor asked. "No," she assured with a smile. This quite surprised Eleanor because Alinda May's condition was so unpredictable. When others were feeling woozy, she felt fine. Other times, her condition seemed critical. Eleanor decided to take advantage of this opportunity. "Alinda May, I will be back in a minute. I need to talk to President Tippett." "Yes, go," Alinda May said. "I'll sleep." Eleanor made her way back through the car and across the coupling to the next car, where she found President Tippett. When he saw her approaching, he stood up and shook her hand. "Sister Wise, how are you doing?" "I'm doing well, President, and Sister Polson seems to be doing quite well also. Miraculously, this bumpy stretch of track doesn't seem to bother her as much as it does some of the other saints." "That's good to hear. Now, what can I do for you, Sister Wise?" "I just wondered if you could speculate as to when you think we will arrive in Florence." "That's a hard one to predict," he said. "We have lost almost a day and a half stranded in the middle of New York State, and we stayed an extra night at Niagara Falls. If everything goes as planned from here on out, we might get to Omaha by the first part of August, where we will be met by the Teamsters from Utah. Then they will drive us the 6 miles up to Florence in wagons. What do you mean the first part of August? I would say we could arrive anywhere from the 1st to the 5th. Oh, President, I do so hope we will be there by August 1st. Remember the letter you gave me in New York? It was from my Aunt Lucy and Uncle John, who are in Florence. They said they may have to give up their temporary quarters there to an incoming family and join one of the companies headed out on August 1st. They are my only family now, and I do so want to be with them when I cross the plains. Sister Wise, I don't know if I can comfort you any, but just as we have setbacks along the way, the leaders of Florence have changes in their departure dates all the time. They have supply problems, sickness problems, livestock problems, and leadership problems that change their plans daily. Ideally, they want to send the wagon trains out as soon as they can in August so they won't get caught in early storms that sometimes come up in the Rocky Mountains. But oftentimes they delay companies a week or two into August. That gives me some hope, President. And if they are forced to leave without you, don't worry. There are plenty of others who will look after you. You'll have your 7 sisters, and we priesthood leaders are instructed to watch over the members of the company as though they are members of our own family. Eleanor felt reassured. Thank you, President, she said, shaking his hand. That certainly makes me feel better. That's the end of chapter 7. Over and out.